Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Nerds with Friends. My name is Cody Leach, and as always, I'm joined by Christian Garcia.
And Walter, anyone who's watching YouTube, look at him. There he
Yeah,
goes. Around the
there it
corner.
goes. Okay, that will be the last mention of that cat during this
Oh,
podcast.
look at him. Look at this guy. Say something, Walter. Say something.
He's not going to say anything. So let's address the elephants in the room here, and that is, in fact, Christian and I being in our rooms. And the audio quality, video quality is definitely not up to what we're used to. And that is because I got COVID. So that's cool.
That's the universe punishing him because all of Comic-Con is it's not real. It's not real. I'm immune. I'm immune.
I know. I made so many jokes, and finally the universe is like, oh, let's see what's not real now. Yeah, so I got COVID. So yeah, pretty exciting week right after Comic-Con, get home from Comic-Con, lose my job, and then a few days later get COVID. So it's
Can we
been
talk about that? I don't know.
about me losing my job.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, it's fine. I mean,
we go into detail. I don't know.
Yeah, we could do that. Yeah, sure. So for those of you, I mean, I've brought it up before that I worked for Best Buy. And for the past 3 years, I've been like a market trainer or a sales enablement specialist, which means essentially that I would go into stores or do like Zoom chats, kind of like this, and I would train people on how to sell home theater and premium audio stuff. And so it started off as a pilot program that I was part of, and to see if it was like an effective program that if people like if we sent this team of people out specifically to train, if we would improve sales numbers in the premium audio space. Because when we're talking premium audio, like a lot of people don't actually know kind of what that would entail. They think like, oh, like Bose or what's Sonos or whatever, but it's
which I learned from Cody that Bose is trash. I didn't
yeah. Yeah, there's a joke in the industry that we say no highs, no lows, it must be a Bose. And yeah, so people think those are pretty good sounding systems, but in reality, they are very, very low on the totem pole. And so this kind of stuff I was training people how to sell is like $40,000 speakers, where each one speaker is 20,000, the other one is 20,000, or sometimes even more. And to sell something like that, obviously, it's more like there's a little bit more to it than, hey, here it is. Do you want to get it? You know what I mean? So I would kind of train people. But yeah, so the program got picked up, went for a few years, and and it got picked up right before COVID started. So we became official right in like February of 2020. So obviously that kind of threw a little wrench into the works as far as like traveling around to other stores. But we adapted really quickly, kind of did the remote thing, and it was going strong for a few years now. And but yeah, we got back from Comic-Con, had a call with my boss and like our territory boss, and it was like, hey, sorry, you guys have been eliminated. So the whole business group got eliminated. So I essentially have until the beginning of September to find something new or take the severance package, which is kind of lame. Been working at that company for 15 years, and not sure if I'm going to stay with them. So we'll kind of see what happens. But I've been with them long enough where I get 6 months of pay as a severance package. So I mean, I definitely, if I were to leave, it's not like I'll be unemployed. You know what I mean? So
anyone listening, if you guys have job leads for Cody, let us know.
Yeah, for sure. Drop them in the comments. We would appreciate that. But yeah, enough about that lame personal stuff. Let's talk a little bit about COVID.
What's it like? He's
so,
lying. He's got donkey pox or some shit.
Yeah. So essentially, it's not like, I don't want to pull a Joe Rogan and say like, oh, it was nothing, right? It sucked for sure. And it's one of the things that I feel very grateful for, though, is having been vaccinated and boosted. I like to think that it was not as bad as it could have been. Um, but yeah, I mean, I was definitely sick, had a fever, didn't really have a cough. Every once in a while, I'd hack up a little something, but primarily I was just like really feverish and like weak and tired, and I could feel congestion in my chest. You might be able to hear a little bit of it in my voice, but
It's not as bad as when we were playing the game with Dice
right,
Legends.
yeah. I'm like right now, I feel fine. Um, so I'm definitely on the mend. But yeah, when we were doing the live stream with Dice Legends, which if you guys haven't checked that out, I think it's still available video on demand on twitch.tv/Dice Legends. That was super fun. But yeah, my voice was like super low and gravelly. And then by the longer we went into that stream, the sweatier I got, because like I was at the point in the sickness then when like just being upright and talking would like wear me out and make me sweaty and tired and gross.
And sexier, by the way, because the voice it got deeper, and then he was getting sweatier. It was
Yeah, I
working.
was glistening. Yeah. um but yeah, I mean it was not very much fun. And I think by far the worst part about it is, being responsible and living with roommates. I've basically been locked in my room for over a week now. And it that doesn't seem like a bad thing until you start to think about some of the stuff you're missing. Like, oh, you just Uber Eats. Like, okay, but to Uber Eats, I have to go out into like either my house or go through my backyard and mask up. So I would have the K95 and then a cloth mask over the top of it. Then I would have latex gloves on, and then I would carry around. I don't have it with me right now, but I have like this whole pack of disinfectant, like Clorox wipes. And so I'd like put 2 of those in my pocket, and I would go out, grab the food that the person had left on the sidewalk in San Francisco. So, you got to kind of time it right.
Yeah. And San Francisco sidewalks are fucking gross.
Yeah. And so go out there, grab it, wipe down every handle and handrail that I did, and go back upstairs. And I was so feverish and weak at the time, going down and coming back up, I'd be super sweaty and exhausted and lightheaded. Like I'd get back up and be like, oh my God, I'd pass out.
You should have done, should have just made one of those dumb waiters and just like got the bucket. Just
yeah, exactly. But yeah, so that's rough. And then another thing to think about is like I don't have a refrigerator in my room, right? And you're like, well, you could just pop out into your kitchen, put it in there, and then pop back in. But it's like I'm touching food and then putting it in the refrigerator with all my roommates' foods.
Yeah.
So
in a closed box,
right,
incubated like
right, exactly. So I would basically anything I started ordering, I would do like I'd have to get something that like could sit for a day, which kind of sucks. And it got very expensive. I did Instacart right when I got sick. So I got like soup and crackers, Gatorade, bunch of cold medicine and stuff like that. And one thing I learned is that like trying to heat up soup in your room with no microwave it's kind of a tough
just friction. Just
what I did is I have a kettle or electric kettle in my bathroom that I use for like making tea or whatever. And so what I would do is I heat up that with boiling water, and then pour into my French press that I have for coffee. Just pour the boiling water in there and put a can of soup in there, and just let it chill in there until the water kind of like heats it up. And then I would dump it out and do it like 2 more times, and it would become like semi-warm soup. No, it was a little better than room temperature, but it wasn't like a hot bowl of chicken noodle soup that I was aiming for. I'm sure if I did it longer, it would work, but it was like, yeah, it was pretty rough. But now it's like, now I'm back to normal. So now I'm just Uber Eating, like, a sandwich or whatever. But it's like, I got to get a sandwich that can keep like overnight, so I can get 2 and have one for one day and one for another. Because
it's like so no expensive. Mayonnaise, please.
Yeah, exactly. exactly. Just a dry, cold cut sandwich. And I'll eat one at nighttime for dinner and one kind of as a late breakfast, so it's not sitting out too long. But yeah, it's been rough. But feeling a lot better now. And I haven't tested yet today. I was still negative or still showing positive yesterday, but I'm going to check again maybe tonight and see if I'm coming up clean.
You know, I was talking to a nurse at my work, and I was telling her how I went to Comic-Con, and I told her how like I went in going with the knowledge like this is probably where I'm gonna get COVID, so I'm just gonna go in assuming I'm gonna get it. And she was like, and of course you did. And I was like, no, actually I didn't. She's like, you didn't? I was like, no, I was like 130,000 people.
And neither did I. Yeah. Like I got it after when I came back.
Who knows? Maybe it was incubating in your system for a while. But
everything I've been reading, because so we got back from Comic-Con on that Sunday, right?
Sunday.
I didn't test positive till past that Sunday and on the Wednesday afterwards.
Okay.
So that's like 10 days, which is 3 times as long as the incubation periods I've been reading.
So when did Nick get it?
Nick got it like earlier this year. He did.
Oh, I thought he had got it from Comic-Con. No. Well, either way, the nurse was impressed that I was around that many people. Yeah. And she was just like, if I can ask you, like, are you taking any medication? I was like, I was about to answer, like, never mind. That's
ivermectin. Or tranquilizers.
And I was like, actually, yeah, I take this for anxiety. She's like, there's some studies to suggest that if you're taking anti-anxiety medication, it actually prevents you or helps you prevent getting the virus. And I was like, yeah, my anxiety finally helped me with something. Yeah. And she thought that was hilarious. But who knows? I haven't read any studies on it. I'm just going by what this nurse said. But I was like, awesome.
Yeah, well, I think that's what's still so crazy about this is you think about it, we're 2 years into COVID now. And like, we still don't know, like, what prevents it and what makes it better. Everyone's still like guessing. Like there's some things that have shown some work, lessening the symptoms, but some things are not, working like they should. It's just so weird. But I'm a firm believer, whether it's the liberal mind in me or not, or just a placebo, but I'm definitely a believer that having been vaccinated and boosted really helped me out, because I was basically like, it was like 6 days that I was sick. And like today, like I could feel like, I wouldn't go out and, run a mile or something, but I'm definitely feeling a lot better. Like, sitting here talking to you or playing video games is not like giving me sweaty, like lightheadedness anymore,
So it depends on the game, man. I don't know.
Yeah. New season of Apex Legends just came out and I'm getting pretty sweaty in that. But I'm on the mend, and it's definitely been shitty. I'm excited to like be able to go grocery shopping and not have to spend $30 every time I want to eat something.
Yeah, I know, man. It gets pretty rough out here.
Yeah, exactly. Especially since I'm unemployed. But man, it's been an experience. And now, now that I've had it, like I'm definitely excited to not have it anymore. And I do think that everyone needs to be a little bit more responsible on how they are when they when they go out and see people after having it too, because I've known several people who've had it, and judging by how long this has taken me, like I'm like, I swear I saw you not that long after you said you had it. And like I'm really playing it like safe. Like that's why we're doing this. Like I could have tested today and maybe came up negative, but better safe doing this, before we go and record in person again. So
for sure.
All right, well, let's get into some nerdy stuff. Enough talking about my boring COVID-filled unemployed life.
We got to get you that Pfizer, man. You're messing with that Johnson & Johnson.
I had the Pfizer booster.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
okay. We need to get you the other booster.
The Moderna. Just
No,
get
no, no.
get
Just get another Pfizer.
oh get another one.
We
No,
don't
I
want
don't.
you to get worse. Get the AstraZeneca
Yeah, I don't need it anymore. Now I've got the antibodies.
for a little bit. For a
Hmm.
little bit. It's for months or something. I don't know.
Yeah, just like the booster. This is going to be part of our yearly lives now. So it's definitely, it's just as bad as like some flus that I've had. It's nowhere near as bad as the swine flu when I had that. Um,
Jesus.
so, but I will say it was funny because it was the first time I've been sick since like maybe 2019, 2018, because I never got sick during all of COVID.
Well, no, we're
Uh,
all wearing masks and staying away from
yeah,
people.
washing our hands and, yeah. So, yeah, it was definitely, it definitely felt like my sick card came due. So, but let's do some nerdy confessions. Let's get into the show proper. Christian, why don't you lead us off?
My nerdy confession is started a new show that's awesome, and I'm mad at the nerds who follow us and haven't mentioned it. Is Reservation Dogs on Hulu.
Yeah,
It
I've heard good things about that one.
it is hilarious. It is hilarious. It's super funny. It follows these four teens on obviously on an Indian reservation, and they just go on like wacky, silly adventures, and it's hilarious, man.
Yeah.
There's this one. I guess I would say the main character, the main kid. He gets hit by some paintballs by I guess a rival gang, and he passes out, and he sees a vision of
Ooh, Vision Quest.
it's not a quest, but he sees a vision of another Native American who's trying to give him some advice. And
Crystal meth. Oh, okay.
Jesus,
That's big on the reservations.
I don't know if they make it. I'm pretty sure it's the white man who goes and sells it.
Oh, a lot of them make it too.
But just that guy in particular, and he has he has small scenes, but every time he comes up, it's golden. He has to be a comedian because his comedic timing is so good. I want to look him up.
Yeah.
I don't want to give any of the jokes away, but it's super, super funny. You guys should make sure and watch it. I'm definitely going to reach out and see if I could get someone from that show on the podcast. I make no promises, but hopefully we can get someone. It's so funny.
Nice.
And then I found out it was Taika Waititi who's a executive producer on it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I know he had something to do with it for sure. So, yeah,
he got his hands on everything.
He does, and needs to get his hands off of Thor.
Who knows? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, we know he can mix comedy and drama just from watching Jojo Rabbit, which was a perfect blend.
I feel like he's gotten a lot of bad press because of Love and Thunder, and I think we all need to take a step back and realize he's definitely batting positive. You know what I mean?
100%.
He's definitely done, like, Hunt for the Wilder People was excellent. Jojo Rabbit was excellent. One of my new favorite movies of all time, kind of thing. Ragnarok changed Thor's character entirely for the better. Sure. So he's definitely done more good stuff than bad stuff. So,
What We Do in the Shadows was super hilarious.
What We Do in the Shadows, the movie and the show are both great. So he's definitely doing more good than bad. All right, my nerdy confession is I just finished the final season of, or at least the final season so far of the Orville, which is Seth MacFarlane's.
Oh yeah, I need to catch up.
Star Trek show. So it got
is that on Hulu as well?
It is. So it got canceled on Fox or whatever network it was on, and Hulu picked it up to revive the show essentially. And so they did a season called The Orville New Horizons, which is like their Hulu, rebranding or whatever.
Well, he's trying to cut ties with Fox, right? I mean, he's been talking crazy shit about them since I want to say since Trump got elected.
Well, yeah, I'm sure. One thing that's so strange to me, that's always been strange, is how Fox has been the home for shows like Family Guy and The Simpsons and King of the Hill back in the day, which I've heard is coming back, which I'm very excited for. And which is so hypercritical of the normal Fox demographic. But it is strange that those shows have always been, on that network. But anyway, back to the Orville. if you guys haven't checked it out, it's like it is essentially the Star Trek show that we've all been wanting for a long time, and until recently with the Strange New Worlds, which is excellent as well. We haven't had where every episode is its own like mission, and yeah, there are some through lines of plot that have tie in from the beginning of the season to the end of the season. Like there's a big alien invasion and stuff, but overall, every episode is its own thing, and they're going down to planets and dealing with like the complex either sociological differences between our cultures and an alien culture, or like differences of perspective, and it's all about how they handle it. And yes, you got Seth MacFarlane cracking jokes and stuff, but it's definitely not it's not Family Guy in space. It's not as crass and as random as that, but every once in a while there's something funny, like one of the main characters, Bortus, who is like think the Klingons of this universe.
Is that the egg episodes which you're gonna bring up?
Oh sure, yeah, that's one of them. Essentially his species is called the Mocklins, and their entire species is like this big, gruff, muscular, like warrior species. But like you find out that like essentially they're all males, and so they have every relationship they have is sexually homosexual relationship, and then they like lay eggs, and so they sit on top of these eggs completely naked, and it's it's ridiculous, but it's also funny because it brings up complex ideas of like what we think of as masculinity, right? And you come to find out in later seasons that they're not all just males. Some are born females, but they have every single child sex changed into a male at birth.
Yeah, I remember that episode, and like the Orville was trying to
they're trying to understand like it's their culture, but compared to what we know as like what is right and what is wrong, like that doesn't jive well with that, right? So do you respect their culture, or do you try to impose your own culture on them? And it's like it's a very interesting, thought-provoking show, but it's also comedic, right? So but it's just such a good it's such a good sense of like what Gene Roddenberry had right with Star Trek, like it being very introspective on our own social problems, but while exploring it through space. So I love it. If you haven't checked it out, The Orville is amazing. There's 3 seasons. I don't know if it's going to continue because this last episode, the finale, really tied things up, but because of the nature of the show, it could go on forever if it gets picked up again and gets renewed. But really, really good show. Everyone should check it out, especially if you love Star Trek. All right, well, we're going to take a quick little break, and then when we get back, we're going to be talking about some of the new stuff coming out between Sandman on Netflix and then Prey on Hulu, the Predator sequel prequel. So we'll be right back.
Hulu's coming out with some bangers.
And we're back. Okay, so which one do you want to talk about first? Which you got the least amount to say about, Sandman or Prey?
I feel like I have equal amounts, so it doesn't really matter.
Okay, let's start with Sandman then. So Sandman is all out on Netflix right now. 10 episodes, I think.
I believe so.
And if you don't know what Sandman is, it's the adaptation of Neil Gaiman's graphic novel series Sandman of the same name.
So I want to ask. Well, first off, I mean, I guess we're doing spoilers. We don't have the.
We'll do the spoiler free first. Like, should people check it out? Is it worth spending the 10 hours watching it? What do you think?
Okay, so I want to ask you a question first.
Sure.
Because you're not a fan, of Neil Gaiman. How did you feel about it? Is it Gaiman or Gaiman? Gaiman, right?
I think it's Gaiman,
Gaiman?
at least from what I've heard.
I've always said Gaiman. All right, it
Who
doesn't matter.
cares?
Who cares?
Um,
He's not American. That's all that
he's
matters.
not American, so we shouldn't give him any respect. Um, so yeah, I've been pretty clear that like I'm not a big Neil Gaiman fan. I've tried because I am a fan of books and I am a fan of good writing. Um, and I can appreciate him for his like his prose. Like he's a very skilled writer. I just don't think he's a very good storyteller.
Okay.
And I will say I enjoyed this more than I enjoyed actually reading like the first, I think I read the first 2 volumes of Sandman. It's been a long time since I've read it, but I really had to force myself to read and continue reading the comic book.
Okay.
And this one, I think, I mean, it's not super fair because I was stuck at home with COVID, and so I did
keep your body aches and illness out of what you think.
I was hungry for content, so it's hard to judge if I was just like that into it. But I enjoyed it, and I think because it's so visual and you can tell Netflix spent a lot of money on the visual effects. I thought that it was very entertaining, and I think the guy they got to play Morpheus or the Sandman, Dream or whatever you call him, I thought he was excellent as him. He really captured that very stoic character. So I enjoyed it. I will say though, throughout watching it, I noticed all the Neil Gaimanisms that I don't like.
Like, for example,
I think he has a very hard time writing likable characters. Okay. And I'm not saying every character has to be like, oh my God, I love this character so much, but there has to be some sort of redeeming quality to them. You know what I mean? It's a bad sign when like the person I want to see the most from is John Constantine, who's in the comic books. Mm-hmm. He comes in and as a side character. So that's generally a bad sign. When the whole story is called The Sandman, we should be somewhat invested in the Sandman's journey, right? Now, you don't have to be like rooting for him, but we either have to be like interested in him resolving his quest or interested in someone stopping that quest, right? If he's a bad malevolent character, we're like, oh no, we don't want him to achieve his goal, right? It's like reading a Doctor Doom comic. We're interested in Doctor Doom as a character and like the nefarious stuff he gets up to, but in the end we don't want him to succeed and kill everyone in the world, right? So there needs to be some sort of interest in that character's story, and there just isn't any for me in the Sandman story. Now, I haven't read all of it because I think I said I read like 2 trade paperbacks, and I don't know how long it went on. I think it went on for much longer. But I just couldn't give 2 shits about his like journey and his realm and stuff. And
let me guess, you enjoyed the Crow the most?
Yeah, I like the Raven, and then I like the interactions with his sister. And we'll talk a little bit more about like some of the particular story arcs that happen in the show. But I like his interaction with his sister and the interaction with the dude that he follows through time every 100 years.
Yeah.
I do like that, but I was more interested in that dude than, of course, Sandman. Yeah. And I think that's a problem he has. Is he has a hard time writing a compelling story. And I think I noticed that in this show as well, but because it's so visually appealing, like even if I don't give a shit about him, like it's fun to look at the stuff swirling in the background and like the monsters that show up and things like that. So I think the other thing that I dislike about him, at least in this story in particular, I haven't read that much Neil Gaiman because I haven't been a fan of the couple things I have read, is that he's very much into a soft magic system, which we discussed on a previous episode. A hard magic system is like your Brandon Sandersons, right? There's a strict economy and rules to the magic system where, you know, if Kaladin Stormblessed wants to fly up into the air and, fight bad guys with his shard blade, he needs Stormlight. So if he doesn't have any, he can't just like make it happen, right?
Yeah.
So there's strict rules to it. And he can't like just, we know that in the sense of that character, which is from the Stormlight archive, we know he can fly and change gravity. We know he can summon the shard blade and, we know what the power entails, right? And with Sandman, and this doesn't really ruin anything, is that we don't know what the range and extent of his powers are, and they can jump or shrink in magnitude and effectiveness as the story needs. And it's just, to me, that's just cheap. And, there's no sense of gravity to it. Right?
So I would counter with that. Yes, in the dream world, in his realm, absolutely, he has, for the most part, complete power. But in the waking world, he doesn't have much. He's kind of basically a human walking around, unless it has to do with someone dreaming. Also, his 3 items that he poured into his power with, which he loses, like I would say that's his hard magic, where it's like, oh, he gets stripped of these things and he doesn't have it, so he's trying to figure out and piece together. So I would say there's a mix of both. I agree with you. There's some things where it's pretty soft, but I think there's a blend. I would agree with you that there's a little bit more of the soft.
Well, let's get into some spoilers then. So if you haven't seen Sandman and you're interested in going in fresh, pause now and go check it out. It is worth watching, I'd say. So, but to really discuss some of the stuff I didn't like, and some of the stuff I did like, we're going to get into some spoilers. So here we go. So yeah, let's talk about his 3 items, right? So he's got his helm, which is cool, spooky looking gas mask type,
which
deal.
Is the one thing we really don't know what it does. They never really, nor the comics nor in the show, right. They don't really say what the mask is for.
Right. And then he's got his bag of sand. And
right. That is what he uses to make people go to sleep and dream.
Yes, but he also uses it to travel, to make stuff, to you know, so it's like oh, it does sand powers, and then he's got his ruby, which the ruby
is the most powerful one,
supposedly, right? so the ruby is described as being able to make dreams come true.
Right.
So, and we see it abused with that one guy, Jonathan, I forget the last name. He's like the great descendant of Tyrion Lannister, or Tywin Lannister, sorry. And I thought it was like, it's used to great effect in the diner when we see like how horribly things can go and stuff when it's abused, right? Like that's very interesting.
I will say so one thing about the show was, I thought, like, one of the things that bugs me with comic book movies, comic book shows, it's like, oh, they didn't follow the book panel for panel and or like exactly the same beats. And I will say in this show, they did for the most part. And I will say, I get why a lot of shows and movies don't do it, is that there was nothing really in it for me. I knew exactly where it was gonna go. I knew exactly what it was gonna happen.
Right. A lot of it was very familiar, even for me, who I read that book probably 10 years ago.
Although they did tone down some stuff. I'm surprised how far they went with the guy in the diner, because in the graphic novel, in the comic books, it goes much further, much further. but I was surprised that it went that way.
So here's my problem with some of his magic stuff, right? So specifically with the ruby, he has this ruby that makes dreams come true. Okay, cool. I can buy that, right? Like you have to go into any sort of work of fiction, especially fantasy, with some sort of buy-in, right? But if he says that he created the ruby and put his power into it, there was never any explanation as to why he would do that, aside from the fact that doing so would make it more likely that it would get stolen and that a story would happen. So, and then he says all of these things, his tools, the helm, the sand, and the ruby, are part of him, right? They're like, they're not specific items, but they are a piece of him. But then the ruby gets destroyed and he becomes more powerful. Right?
He regained the power that he put in.
He regained the power that he had put inside there. So, but if it was in fact part of him, that power should not have been released. It should have been destroyed because it was destroyed.
Right.
Right. So again, it's that I think that Neil Gaiman does not do a great job of, like, he has interesting concepts. A ruby that makes dreams come true is an interesting idea, but the execution of it leaves too many plot holes. Where I think someone like your Brandon Sanderson or your George R. R. Martin or even Stephen King to a certain extent, that when they create these powers or these fantastical items, they once it's created, it follows a fairly strict rules, right? Where Neil Gaiman, he creates an idea because he thinks it's interesting, and then it just lets it do whatever he wants it to do in the moment, and that's always kind of bothered me. But yeah, it's just like why are you going to create an item that does your power for you, and then put all your power into it? It like what purpose does that serve? It just doesn't make any sense.
He's really old, Cody. He's been around for millions of years.
Yeah, and
since things have been dreaming.
Yeah, never learned any
you're bound
lessons.
to make some mistakes.
Sure. But yeah, overall, like, yes, I have problems with Neil Gaiman, but I think it's an interesting show, and it's definitely a fun watch. I think it's definitely worth people's time.
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple small things that I didn't think would bother me until my fiance pointed it out, and that's where he looked great. His look, his hair,
yep,
even the way he spoke, which I don't know if that was his voice. Hopefully it was, but he's exactly what I thought he would look like in real life. Except for the most part in the graphic novels, you don't, and this is what makes him creepy, because he's supposed to come off as creepy. Like in the show, he just comes off as like, oh, he's an emo guy, whatever.
Sure.
But it's that he's like pasty white and that he has stars in his eyes as opposed to
right.
And in the beginning, it didn't really bug me, but
they showed it in the beginning
a little bit.
When he's trapped in the basement, like every time you see him, I'm like, ooh, this is really cool. But I think honestly, like, they spent so much money on special effects for everything else. I think that was one of those things that they kind of like conceded. They're like, okay, we're not going to make his eyes like twinkly crazy all the
contact
time.
Lenses, even with like a couple little tiny stars or like a galaxy. I don't think it would have been that expensive, but like that to me is something that got missed, where like when he's interacting with people in the waking world, like even though I was like, oh, this guy's human. Is he? I don't know. There's something still creepy about him and weird. I can't really put my finger on it.
Right.
I just think it would have been a cool little element. But yeah, I mean, there was just I liked it, but there were some things that were missing. I still think the audio drama on Audible is a way better experience. But it's McAvoy's doing the voice of Morpheus, which he killed it, man. He was so good. He was so good. I would honestly, if people would ask me which one should I do, the audio drama or the show, I'm like, do the audio drama. Like, the things that you can't do visually or pull off, like just them the character explaining it to you and you imagining it, was just was just better. Like I could not, when I was listening to it, I could not stop listening to it. Like I was like, forget whatever shows I'm doing. We're like, all right, I need to clean. All right, I'm just gonna keep listening to this while I'm doing what I need to do. It was so good.
Yeah, I think it's definitely got some fun stuff. I think like for me it was the visual aspect of it was so much fun. Like like I thought they did a really good job with the Corinthian.
Yeah.
I thought he looked. I mean, that guy the actor did an excellent job. I thought. I even liked. I liked Johanna Constantine, which we were kind of discussing off pod that like it's kind of lame if they just gender swapped her for no reason. But if it's a rights thing, like they don't have the rights to John Constantine.
I definitely think it was a rights thing for sure.
Though, did you
Because
notice in the intro, it's a Warner Television production?
for sure. But we also didn't get Batman, who's supposed to be in it.
That's
So
true. Yeah, that's a hard ask, I suppose.
yeah. So I mean, I think it's a rights thing for sure because Batman's in it, and
for sure.
I did like how they did Satan. It was exactly how he looked like in the comics with the curly hair and the bat wings.
Gwendolyn Christie, is that her name?
I believe so. Yeah.
The chick from Brienne of Tarth from Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones. Yeah, that was awesome.
I thought the battle that they had between them was done very well and made a very like that's a hard thing to make an interesting television out of.
Yeah.
And I thought they did a very good job. That's another thing though. It's like he goes in and he's like she's like, is Satan Lucifer more powerful than you? And he's like, oh, like crazy more powerful. And then just goes in there and it's like, I mean, us as the audience could have outthought Satan in that one. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you mean this whole time, like all you had to say was like, I'm Hope and Hope can't be killed. It's like, okay.
Well, I mean, yes, you could have said, all right, I'm Despair and you can't, like, that would crush Hope for sure. But I mean, if you think about it, like you got the god of imagination and creativity, storytelling, that's all his realm. And sure, Satan is tricky, but I don't know. I could see it going either way.
Here's the argument though, is like, okay, yes, like I could see why he would win in that sort of contest, but this is a contest in hell put on by Lucifer themselves.
Yeah.
Right. If that is this like the only contest available to these eternal gods or whatever, or is it like like, okay, if you have a dispute, you have to do like the crazy imagination poetry thing, and that's the only way to settle any disputes. It's an interesting idea that I'm sure like Neil Gaiman jerked himself off thinking of, like, oh, what if they did like poetry and like that's how they won battles, and it's like, okay, good, we get it, you're smarter than us, but
you know what I love is like how I feel about Christopher Nolan is how you feel.
Oh yeah, and don't get me wrong, like I understand that with Christopher Nolan. At the same time, and same thing with Neil Gaiman. I understand that Neil Gaiman is a talented writer. Like he can string together words in a way that I couldn't do. Right. I just think there's a difference between that and being a good storyteller.
For sure.
Same thing like Christopher Nolan. Christopher Nolan can make a movie that does things that we've never seen in cinema before. But does that movie necessarily do a good job telling a story? Like Inception is the perfect thing. It's like, we have to just accept there's this little briefcase that you plug into your nose and that lets you go into dreams. Like, I understand that.
Or the Tenet, like, oh,
you go through this portal and go backwards. It's like, okay, cool. But if you think about it too hard, there's plot holes that arise. Like, I understand that. But both of them are masters of their craft in a certain aspect for sure.
Yeah. So, no, I mean, there was some design stuff that I thought was excellent. Desire was awesome. Very well done.
Absolutely.
Like, dude, that's like it was a great blend where you're like, I don't know like which gender this person is trying to identify.
Yeah, it's same thing with Lucifer. You know what I mean? Yeah. Lucifer, they did a very good job making them like angelic, right? And that's the whole deal. He's a fallen angel, and I thought that was very well done. The production design was very well done in the show. I like how they did the time jumps in the beginning, which is an interesting way to start a story.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely worth checking out. I think you should check out Sandman on Netflix. Definitely worth your time. It's not going to be for everybody, but I think if you got some time to kill and you want to see something cool and fantastic, it's definitely worth your watch. A little bit smaller investment in the time frame though is Prey, which is now out on Hulu. So Prey is essentially a prequel kind of to Predator.
And retconning a bunch of stuff.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the thing that has been so hard for so many years to make Predator into its own franchise is that it started off as a good, interesting idea for a movie, right? Where you go in and you're like, what is happening? There's these commandos in the jungle, and then there's something that's killing them like crazy. Like, is it like some other, enemy force or whatever? And it's like, oh no, it's a freaking alien with lasers and stuff, right? So that in itself is a good idea for a movie. It's been so hard to kind of create a franchise out of that, because once you know what the Predator is and what the Predator is capable of, some of that mystique and intrigue is gone, right? Like even in like the Danny Glover one, right? It was interesting because we got to see it in an urban environment. That was
I
like
love that movie. I love that movie. And I've met Danny Glover and I told him I loved it. And he was like, you know what? Out of all the movies I've done, he's like, that's the one I get the most compliments in. Yeah. And it was hilarious.
And it's not a bad movie necessarily. It's not as good as the first one, but I'd say of the ones that followed, it's probably the best of the ones that followed. The Predator one with Predators with Adrian Brody was pretty good, but still kind of lacking, right? And then the newest one was not great. So this one I think had a very interesting task ahead of it. How do you make a movie where it's believable that these Native Americans from the early 18th century, like how are they going to handle themselves with a predator, right? Who obviously took out Arnold Schwarzenegger and his whole gang.
Well, didn't take out Arnold.
Well, that's true. Yeah, didn't take out Arnold, but took out these elite like commandos.
My boy Dutch survived.
Yeah, exactly. And Maria or whatever, the girl who they find.
But it's because he didn't see her as a threat. So
exactly, obviously. So it was very interesting that this movie worked as well as it did. And I don't think there's much spoiling a Predator movie. Because again, like the Predator shows up and hunts a bunch of people, and then eventually at least one or two of the people hunting figure out what to do and live. Like that's every Predator movie ever. So one thing, I don't mind talking spoilers.
One thing I do want to say is I hate that they added the tagline and they just cornered themselves if this is the first time the Predator has encountered humans on Earth. That pissed me off so much, just because you could have done more movies throughout time of him fighting different warriors in different places. Sure. And I feel like that would have been fucking great. Like a Predator in like Rome, fighting like, I don't know, a Praetorian or a Legionnaire, like that would have been great. Someone like, Maximus, sure. Like that would have been great, or like some Polynesian like warriors, or like Japan, which eventually we would have gotten, fighting samurais or something like. Yeah, see, like it would have been so great.
Well, here's the thing: they can still fight samurais because samurais took place after this movie. A lot of them did.
Yeah, but like there's still more ancient war, even cavemen, something like that. I don't know, but like
that's such an easy thing for them to retcon. Like, who gives a shit? Like, I think they could very easily do that if they wanted to, and it could always be a different Predator, right? Because spoiler alert, this Predator gets killed.
What?
Yeah, every Predator ever has been killed. But I will say it was very refreshing how good of a movie it was.
Oh, it was cinematically beautiful. There's great shots.
Mm-hmm.
I really like the fight choreography. I mean, usually you see the Predator like just kind of taking people out stealth, distance, or you see the kills like off screen. You just see the blood splatter, and here like you see him go to battle, and it was pretty cool. You see a lot of the weapons, and that was great.
Yeah, and I think they did a great job of showing both the strengths of the Comanches and like their stealth and use of environment, and use of each other, distracting while one attacks and that sort of thing. And then they showed like the strengths of like the French trappers,
Yeah,
who laid ambush, and obviously they have guns and stuff, right? And traps themselves. I thought they did a good job of like kind of showing the strengths and weaknesses of both those groups as they were fighting the Predators, which was really cool. They're like, the movie's not perfect. There's some things that were a little. I think I texted you when I was watching it, where I was like, the first 5 minutes of this are such bullshit, because first of all, she hears off in the distance the bugle of an elk. Then she sees a white-tailed deer, and I was like, okay. I mean, like, don't get me wrong. I think an elk has a much more interesting call to it, because like that long, like, off in the distance, where white-tailed deers just kind of snort, and they're just kind of like, and then she chases this white-tailed deer through the woods. She has a bow and arrow, which is the perfect weapon to hunt a white-tailed deer with. In fact, people still do it today. And instead she throws a tomahawk at it.
yeah.
Right. And I get it, because it's a plot moment where she throws a tomahawk, misses, and then has to go retrieve the tomahawk. That's where we get the lasso tomahawk that happens later in it. I understand why they did it. It's just silly. And then we see her dog is trapped in like one of those bear trap style clamp traps.
I'm assuming it was like a coyote or a wolf one, because if it was a bear one, now granted it got its tail, but it still would have snipped the tail off.
I mean, the only difference between them is the size. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
for sure.
But that clamp style, I don't know what the technical term is for it, but that clamp style trap where it has the little pedestal in the middle, if you depress that, then it clamps on, right? And it's clamped on the dog's tail. So here's something that like is so simple to change about that I don't understand why they did it. Is like, there's no way that dog's tail could set off that trap. Those things, they require more pressure than what like a wagging tail would give. And for the tail to wag into it, he'd have to be laying on the ground, wagging his tail into it over and over and over again to get it to clamp on his tail. So like, I don't, it just seems so cheap to me when everything looks beautiful. They have people speaking actual Comanche language. This was the first movie I think that had a Comanche audio track to it, which is interesting, and I'm glad that they did it when it's featuring heavily Comanches. But it's like, you went through all that extra, research, and then like in the first 5 minutes of this movie, you have so many egregious errors in how hunting works.
I love that the stuff that like, you can buy into an alien coming in,
right?
You can buy into humans
like,
being able to kill this advanced alien, but like the yell of an elk, and then you get a deer.
Well, it's not that like, it doesn't ruin the movie for me, right? But it's just, it bothers me that they're so simple.
Yeah.
Like the deer was not real, right? It was CG.
Yeah.
Make it an elk. Who gives a shit? like the fact that the audio guy and the guy producing the animal did two different things is just such a silly mistake to make.
Yeah.
And then like, have the dog get its tail clamped. It's like, okay, well, maybe it's because PETA wouldn't let them actually put like a fake thing on its actual leg, or they didn't want the leg to be broken, or what. Like, I get it. Like, but do something different then. It just seems so silly to me in those first like 5 minutes. It was like, well, it the realism where it should be easy, like is so they did such a poor job of it. They did a good job of the stuff that is hard to make us believe, that she's actually chasing a deer. Like that deer looked pretty good, right? That there's actually an alien from outer space fighting them. That looked great. Like and it sounded great, and they made that believable. But the stuff that's easy is they just like threw it at the wall and like whatever, people don't care. And so that's always frustrating to me in any sort of thing. Any sort of like outdoor stuff that people just get really wrong is silly to me.
So one of the things that I loved a whole lot,
Mhm.
but I ended up also hating was the fight with Dabe, the older brother,
Yeah.
and the Predator. Dude, he came out like a G
No,
with
he
a
was so
horse.
cool.
He was so good. He came out with the horse, he's pegging him with the bow and arrow. And even when like he didn't penetrate, it was taking him completely off guard. Jumps off the horse, impales him, sliding under, grabbing arrows, and just like tearing this Predator apart. And I was like, this is so fucking cool. This is awesome. And then, like a little bitch, the Predator vanishes. And I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, fuck this. Like, you finally get, like, your whole thing is that you want to find a challenge on a planet and battle to see if you are a skilled hunter,
That's
fighter,
always
whichever.
that's always one thing that's kind of struck me strange about the whole, like what we know of the Predator's mission, which is to hunt the most dangerous game on our planet, right?
Yeah. And then he
It
meets a challenge and he fucking cheats.
Yeah, exactly. It's so strange to me that he like is invisible almost the entire time, and then yes, he does have like advanced weaponry and stuff like that. So it's always struck me as a weird like inconsistency in that world. You know what I mean? I did think that it was cool that this Predator was uh, teched down a little bit from
Yeah,
what
that was
we've
cool.
seen, right?
To the
Because
mask, to the laser pointers,
right,
all of that. Yeah, that was cool.
and which I thought was a cool, because that's what everyone's first like reaction, including our own, to like how is this going to be last longer than 5 minutes if there's a Predator with fucking lasers and the disc thing, and how is this going to be a movie if he's just completely more powered than all these other ones. And like, don't get me wrong, he still was. But this is a Predator that also is 300 years in the past, 400 years in the past. So I thought that they did that really well, having it so that the laser thing would lead these like arrow harpoon things around. I thought that was an interesting take on it, and he had like that shield thing. So there was some good. It was new enough where we had seen some stuff we'd never seen before in a Predator movie, but it had all the, the classic callbacks, like the "if it bleeds, we can kill it" or whatever, lines in there. But yeah, man, I really enjoyed it. I thought it was great. Again, it's nothing groundbreaking because it's a Predator movie, but I think that this is the best type of entry we could possibly hope for a new Predator movie.
No, yeah, overall I loved it. Again, it was just a couple of small things like that part where it's
Also,
like,
the tomahawk with the rope on it, like I get it, it's an interesting idea that just wouldn't work. You know what I mean? You got this like hand braided rope tied around the middle of a tomahawk, but we're expected to believe she can throw it and it spins perfectly with this rope hanging on the side of it the entire time. It's silly. I understand why they did it because it looks cool, and we got to give her some sort of like intuitive edge over the Predator, and like we got to show that she's actually a good hunter, even though she's not really.
she wasn't a good hunter, but she was a good fighter and she was intelligent.
Yeah,
She outsmarted, and that's one thing
she used her unique set of skills to beat the Predator,
that's
because
one thing that I
none of
did
the
enjoy.
other none of the other Comanche Brave guys knew about the the medicine that makes you cold,
Yeah,
that makes it so you can't see the predator.
that's what that was one thing I loved, that it wasn't like she got lucky, or what it was, the term Mary Sue, is that the term, where like
Right.
where the
Where
whole
she's just
time
instantly good at everything, you know what I
the
mean?
whole time she's learning, the whole time like she's watching how it fights,
Mm-hmm.
she sees what happens with the laser pointer, so the whole time she's like piecing together a plan. That part I loved. One thing, and it was slightly annoying, it doesn't ruin the movie or anything, I would have enjoyed, like, it almost seemed like they accepted the fact that it was an alien, versus you would think, not ever encountering a creature, they have their own lore, they have their own stories, like they would have thought, oh, this is a spirit or a
She
demon.
called it that.
Oh, maybe I missed it then.
Yeah, it was. Oh, now I can't think
She
of the
said Thunderbird, which was cool, because when she saw the
when she
spaceship
saw
coming
the
in,
spaceship, she
that
called it a
was like,
Thunderbird.
that was awesome. I was like,
But when
that's
she
great.
saw him, because he has that skeletal mask on, she called him something which is a name of a Native American.
Wendigo, I didn't hear that, but
It
it's
wasn't. It wasn't a Wendigo. It was. Uh,
Skinwalker, I didn't hear that, I don't know.
it was no. It's called like a Moonwalker or something like that. It's like a, you know, one of their folklores kind of thing.
Okay,
And
I didn't hear that, I missed
it
that,
does
so.
kind of look like it was brief. Like they should have been calling it that the entire time, um, to kind of bring that home, because it does. If you look at the Predator, it does look like one thing you may or may not know about me, Christian, is my grandparents were huge Native American art like fanatics.
Okay.
So uh, up in my cabin and at my dad's house, there's all sorts of Native American like sand paintings, which is where they actually go and like drop different color grains of sand to make a big painting, which would be on the ground. But you know, they've obviously put a cover over it so you can hang on a wall. Pottery, and then Kachina dolls, which are, you know, the little dolls that they would make to represent their gods and like monsters and folklore and stuff. And it does, if you look at the Predator, he looks kind of like one of those Kachina dolls. So it was pretty cool to kind of see that, and to that, like they could have just made it look like the Predator we know, with the metal mask, you know, with the, you know, the metal.
Oh, I lost you mic wise.
I think I hit my mute button.
Oh, there we go.
So it'd be easy to make it look like the Predator that we all know and expect, but they made it look like how these early Native Americans would interpret it, right? You know, so it's got the skeletal mask and stuff. So
I actually love that. I love the skeletal mask stuff. That was
yeah,
pretty
I
cool.
thought it was cool. Yeah, so I think it was great. I think people should check it out. It's, to me, you know, it's a bummer that it was released on Hulu. Like that would have been a great movie to see in theaters. So
I'm glad I didn't have to pay for it, and you wouldn't have been able to watch it at home.
That's true. That's I get it. Like don't get me wrong. Like selfishly, it was great because I could watch it in my room. You know, I have a nice TV. I listen to it with nice headphones on, so it got the real cinematic sound and everything. But at the same time, like that movie would benefit from being in theaters, just like Top Gun was,
Yeah.
right? Top Gun Maverick. That movie it would not be as talked about as it was if it had come out on HBO Max. At the same time, I don't think as many people would have been willing to watch a Predator movie if you did have that, you know, that buy-in of going to the theater. So,
you know, it did break something. Like I think it was like the most watched streaming movie. There was something I saw
sure.
today. It broke something.
I could definitely see that. And I think, you know, we'll see more and more of that. It's a bummer to me to know that most people who watch that, which, you know, kind of bringing it full circle back to you know, my job at teaching people about the importance of premium audio. Most people who watch streaming stuff at their home, whether it's this podcast on YouTube or Sandman on Netflix, they don't have a setup where they're getting that cinematic experience. Now there's people out there who do, obviously, like my house is full of audio equipment, right? But to see a movie like that and watch it on either a computer screen that's 13 inches big with the computer speakers that sound like shit, or, watching it on, maybe a nice 4K TV that you have an Apple TV or something on, but then you got the TV speakers that sound like shit, right? You're missing out on a cinematic experience, and you don't know it because you're used to it and it's easy and it's what you're used to. But like, compare that to when you go to the movies and you see an IMAX movie or an XD movie, or, if you could go to one of those Dolby cinemas that AMC has, oh my God, it's freaking amazing the amount of difference that cinematic sound and environment has on the enjoyment of a movie. And it's a bummer that really good movies like this are skipping that option entirely. I'm all for like doing like like what HBO is doing now, where a movie will come out in theaters and like 45 days later it comes out on streaming, which is really quick.
Yeah.
I'm all for that, but like, it would be cool to have the option to see some of these movies in theaters. And I worry that more and more are just going to be streaming exclusives.
Well, I would say that probably as more and more movies come out exclusively on streaming, we're probably going to get better and better sound systems and TVs but still, like, to me, the movie theater experience, it would never compare. I love going, but going as a kid, I still go. I love going out to movie theaters. And sometimes when you don't get a shite audience, it's great to have people have the same energy of excitement that you do.
Yeah.
It's just like when except like things like where it's Endgame, or Avengers, where you're like, yeah, the energy goes up, and you're like, all right, everyone shut the fuck up because they're about to say something.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, I want people to I don't want people to fall out of love with movies, because like it's always been something that I've really enjoyed. Like, you think about going and seeing, like, it's a bad example maybe because the last Star Wars movie was not the best, right? But like, I could tell you, going in to see that movie, I was excited to see that movie. And even, when it started up and like, the first space battle happens, like, it's an exciting experience. And I just don't want people to lose that and then have movie studios start to make shittier, less cinematic movies. You know what I mean? So I just worry about that kind of stuff. But that's a philosophical question for another time. But yeah, go check out Prey, available now on Hulu. It's definitely a good one. And if you have a good sound system, for the love of God, please plug it in. And if you don't have one, consider getting one, because it does make a huge difference.
Just not from Best Buy, because we don't like Best Buy right now.
Right. Well,
unless Cody gets a job again, then go get it.
No one there is going to know how to sell it to you or hook it up. So, it's the training has gone out the window for that. So, but yeah, hopefully next week we'll be back in person, unless Christian gets COVID or something.
Jesus, man.
I just want you to experience it with me, Christian.
Well, it wouldn't be with you anymore.
Yeah. Well, I'll bring stuff. I'll drop stuff off at your house.
There you go.
But yeah, thank you guys for dealing with this less than optimal recording situation this week. Next week, we should be back to normal. Christian, thank you for bringing me cold medicine and stuff, except I will say that cough medicine you gave me tasted awful. I
didn't give it to you for the taste, man. I gave it to you to feel better.
To all the nerds out there, remember, you're not alone. You're with friends. This is Nerds with Friends. Thank you, and see you next week.